As we move from deep philosophical ideas that center on the very idea of being Indian, we now navigate paths unknown in our next session titled Detours and Daydreams, Stories from the Indian Road. Joining us on this panel are authors Indrajeet More and Janhavi Acharekar. It's my great pleasure to introduce the authors. Indrajeet More is a Bangalore-based filmmaker and illustrator who loves documenting people, languages, food, and cultures. In 2021, he completed his BA in philosophy from the Ram Narayan Ruya College. After 4 years of directing food shows, travel series, and sketch comedies for a Marathi content platform, he transitioned to creating independent content. His experiences will, I'm sure, be the envy of many, from working as a bartender in South Goa to filming the life of a 70-year-old Himachali weaver, learning to tango in Orville, painting walls in Varanasi, sharing food with fellow passengers on train journeys, following camel herders in the Thar desert. Indrajeet appears to have done it all. Backpacking clearly fuels Indrajeet's curiosity and helps him understand people with more empathy. He recently published his debut book Solo with Penguin India. This book is an illustrated memoir of his backpacking trips across the corners of India. We welcome Indrajeet More to the stage. Our second speaker, Janhavi Acharekar, an author of the novel Wanderers All, a short story collection, window seat rush hour stories from the city, and a travel guide, Moon, Mumbai, and Goa, the first Indian destination guide by the American travel book series Moon Handbooks. Her short stories feature in various anthologies, while her writings on travel, books, and culture have appeared in leading Indian and international publications, which include the Explore History UK, Condé Nast Traveller UK, The Times of India, The Hindu, The Statesman, Vancouver Sun, Ottawa Citizen, Montreal Gazette, Calgary Herald, among others. Janhavi is a contributing editor to Condé Nast Traveller India and has contributed to Outlook Traveller's Guide, Driving Holidays Across India. She is a Charles Wallace Fellow at the University of Stirling, Scotland. She has a travel website which one can find at the domain www.travelpurist.com. Accompanying them on this journey as a moderator is Professor Ananya Dutta. Ananya is assistant professor at Symbiosis School for Liberal Arts and has been teaching courses in English Media Studies since 2016. She is the recipient of the Anand Gopal Shevade Award for Excellence in English Journalism, awarded by the Government of Maharashtra, and I'm happy to welcome all of them on stage. Thank you.
Hi. So since I'm also one of the organizing committee members and I know this question is in the minds of some of you people, we've scheduled for the lunch break to start at 2 o'clock. So that's when the break will be, yeah? Right, I'm very, very happy to have both of you here today, and I'll try my best to speak less so that I get more time for you guys to speak. So I'm going to get into the questions as rapid fire as we can, so that, given that we're running late, right? So not unexpectedly, a lot of your writing is about the stories of the people you meet when you travel, the scrapes, the mishaps. I want to start by asking you, from your experiences as travelers, do you have a favorite travel story?
Can you hear?
Yeah. I mean, is she audible? Yeah.
So I have several travel stories. I don't think we have enough time for that, because every time you travel, there's like a gold mine of stories which you can't always, put in your writing.
Right.
But there's one that I like to narrate because it always stands out. So I was on assignment for Condé Nast Traveller, the publication for which I'm contributing editor. And I was on an assignment in Bhutan, so I got out of the airport. I had a very young guide receive me, and he introduced himself. He said, "My name's Ugyan Shering, but you can call me UT." And then he was very entertaining, and he was very cheerful, very young. Said, I was the guide for Brad Pitt when they filmed 7 Years in Tibet, because that was filmed in Bhutan. So I said, oh, wow, really? So he said, yeah, but I didn't know that he was Brad Pitt and, this big personality, Hollywood, whatnot. So he said, I met him at the airport. I went to receive him. And I held out my hand and I said, nice to meet you, Mr. Pitt. I'm UT. So he had no option but to say, Brad Pitt, I'm Brad Pitt, 7 years in Tibet. So UT said, UT, 22 years in Bhutan. And I just looked at him and he said, it's a joke. And the entire trip was, just UT and his jokes. And I think for me, that is the most important thing, the people you meet along the way, because they are the real custodians of the place.
Right. Indrajeet, I will let you answer that as well, but it was one of the things that I wanted to kind of pick out from your passages, right? So just because I do want to get you actually a flavor of their writing as well, so I just wanted to read just a little bit about UT, since you brought up that story, right? And this is what you write about. This is what she writes about them. She says, "We rarely reflect upon people like UT. The guides, drivers, waiters, bartenders, shopkeepers, artisans, naturalists, hotel staff, homestay owners, who add to, and this was because she was in Bhutan, right? Who add to the happiness index of our travels. And yet, our journeys would be rendered soulless and incomplete without their jokes and anecdotes, their local tips, and sage travel advice. They are our windows and bridges to new cultures." Yeah, so sorry about that interruption, but yeah, Indrajeet specifically told me, I don't have one. You're really being a mean moderator by insisting I come up with one, but he's spent a sleepless night and he's finally settled on one story that he wants to tell us all.
Like yesterday at the dinner table, we were having a conversation with like a senior fellow writer, and we're just talking about how it's not the grand things that happen, but like a series of small things that happened amid just waiting for a long time. That's what comes with solo traveling. So these small epiphanies and small serendipities, wow, Shashi Tharoor sitting on this, that usually happen is something that we reminisce. And since Diwali is coming, I can never forget the Diwali of 2018, where I was away from home, and I was in Banaras, and the place I was working at a cafe actually, and my friend had come, and she had gotten all the saris with her, like just the sari, nothing else. And at one point, all the Firangi people were like, "Oh my God, what a beautiful," and everything. So we draped everyone in saris, and at one point, all of us were just sitting on the terrace, watching the whole city light up. And for the lunch, we had gone for a place which used to serve very beautiful apple pies in Banaras. And we were like, yeah, how do you get apple pies in Banaras? And they're like so good, like not even like you don't get this kind of good stuff in Mumbai. And we got the whole thing for everyone. And it was something which was very basic, but everyone had such a blast. And the peak was, at one point, everyone was done, and everyone was in the kitchen, and everyone were like singing on top of their voices and doing dishes on Lakshmi Pujan, all of them, since the kitchen staff was on holiday. Like, we will do the dishes. So that dishes doing thing with French, Spanish, Maharashtrian folks in a kitchen in Banaras was something that you always look back upon. But there are like several of these, so yeah.
Right, so I have cut down my questions to the ones that I thought were most important and I definitely wanted to get in, right? And when it comes to Janhavi, the one thing that I think I want, and I mean, I'm hoping lots of my students are in the audience and are very keen to know how one becomes a Condé Nast writer. But also kind of tell us a little bit about your process, right? Like, how does a story kind of come into being, as it were, from the point in time that you think of the idea to the time that it takes, like, it shows up and takes a final form, you know?
So you're talking about the travel
right.
stories.
When you come up with the travel story.
So it really depends. If it's a commissioned piece, the place is already pre-decided. And, but it's a process of discovery, because you go there, you have a vague plan in mind, because you know that when you're done traveling, you can't go back to the place in case you've missed out on something. So everyone sees the final product, which is the travel article, you know, the feature. But there's a lot of admin work that goes behind, and you're frantically sort of trying to see what's happening, not miss out, and so I think that is the larger part when you're traveling. You're making notes. So I did a travel guide for Moon Handbooks, Mumbai and Goa, and that was really a logistical nightmare because it was
Quick couple of stories about the logistical nightmares.
these were these were the days before Google Maps and things. So even now, with all of these you know, sort of conveniences, you still I color code a lot of my stuff and make sure I don't leave out anything, and meet people. Because I write both fiction and non-fiction. So when I'm writing my fiction, there's always an element of truth in it. When I write non-fiction travel, there's always storytelling involved. So I don't see the two as separate necessarily, because, you know, storytelling, which is the essence of fiction, always comes into travel writing, which makes it interesting. Because, I mean, today especially, anyone and everyone is traveling, you know. It's not that romantic, exotic sort of, you know, the era of, say, the, what comes to mind is the colonial travel writers, the original, I mean, you know, like when you look at Marco Polo, not the original, you know, you had Ibn Battuta, the Moroccan travel writer, and you had a whole lot of others. You had Xuanzang. But the ones we know of have the colonial gaze. There was a lot of, you know, exoticization.
But urge everyone to check out what Marco Polo had to say about India. Your eyes, ears, whichever it is going to bleed.
Yeah, so a lot of stuff. So there was a lot of fiction in the travel writing as well. So today, it's, I think, stay true to what you see, but you have to have your perspective as well. Everyone has a unique perspective to travel. And yeah, I think the intrigue, which we're fast losing, you know, so because travel is really about losing yourself.
So Indrajeet, I'm going to give you a chance to tell us the fascinating story about how the book came to be. So Solo is the book, and because I'm not going to probably get to that particular question, do check it out. There are copies outside, and Indrajeet will sign a copy if you want him to. It has lovely illustrations and so on and so forth, right? But what's really interesting about this project is that it was in two stages, let's say, right? So tell us the story about how you came to write Solo and the project that led to it.
So, firstly, that thing came due to sheer boredom, first of all. And also having nothing to do right after traveling for an entire year when the lockdown hit. The last time I had written so much was SSC history paper. And then I had failed.
The first chapter of the book is home. And
Yeah.
it starts it off there, right? That is the travel in that sense begins at home. Sorry.
Yeah.
Subhash.
So I was working for Bhadipa. It's a Marathi content platform that had a subsidiary channel called Bharatiya Touring Party, and I didn't know how it whole thing came out, but I used to be really thrifty when it came to traveling, because it wasn't a choice at the end of the day. It was basically something that you do when you've just like passed out of school and you have some free time to do or like go around. So I used to travel around, and I used to just document it on my own. And later on, it got to a point where I was asked to, you know, let's make a series out of it. Let's make a YouTube series of backpacking alone. And that went on for a whole year. And after that, the lockdown hit. And during the lockdown, there was a lot of uncertainty. There was a lot of content consumption. The content was changing around. And at one point, whatever we consume is through screen. Whatever we make is through screen. What is it that we can do to just sit and some expression can go where like someone could actually hold my work and like go through those pages and like be something which is very personal to them. It is not something that's thrown on their face by algorithm. So that was the motive of writing the book, and also for me to get into a process of writing in general. So I feel like no matter what medium you work with, though it be a film, though it be, I think this internal articulation is something that writing helps you with. So that was something that I had been planning to do, and that went on for 2 months. And Vedika, my ex-girlfriend, when we were dating during the whole situation, she got somehow excited, and she was the one who was like, yeah, arey, karuya, chal. And then she edited the book, and it went on for like a good stretch of 3 years. So we like wrote and wrote and wrote like some 6 drafts. And at one point, we were like, wow, we are sitting on a book. What do we do of it now? How does this thing go out? They're like, cool.
I think this is the part that students really need to pay attention to, right?
I mean, what could be the most hard thing to publish a book? Like, okay. I mean, like, easy. You have to mail to all these big publishers. That went on for a year. Nobody replied. Nothing happened on it. We got ghosted. We got rejected. Everything of that happened. And we were like, you know what? These publishers are going to take so much of money, and, you know, this doesn't make sense. This is not a good industry. We'll do it on our own. We get to keep all the profits. We'll self-publish the book. Let's go. And then we started looking into how self-publishing works. And this was absolutely like something that we had no idea how it works at all. And then we were like, चल ये करके देखते हैं, वो करके देखते हैं. अच्छा, Amazon पे डालना है तो ऐसा होता है क्या? And we were like reaching out to people who like left, right, and center, being absolutely shameless about like, I had no idea I had texted so many people in that time. And I was just like sharing them my proposals. You know, this is something that I've made. It got rejected by almost everyone, but what do you think? What can happen out of it? And through this cycle, this thing went to a writer called Aparna Piramal. And we had no idea she would reply. We were like, we'll text. Zyada se kya hoga? She won't reply. And apparently she ended up sending that proposal to Anushri Kaushal, who's a editor at Penguin. And I think she was on her notice period. So she read the book. She got it approved. She got me signed, and then I think she quit the job. And then for another year, just imagine someone being on the notice period and signing up a book. Like someone working so hard on a notice period is absolutely great. So she did that, and then the whole year went on of the book being getting edited and out in the bookstores. Yeah, but yeah, like yesterday, as we said, like it all starts from like zero again when the book is out. You have to do everything from scratch. So that's fun, but it has its own challenges also. So I'm figuring that out. I'm having fun doing it though. It's fun to get to talk to people like you guys. So lovely.
Right. So I wanted to talk a lot more about this book because it's quite fascinating, right? Because Janhavi said that she's a writer of fiction and non-fiction. This is, I think, one place where it kind of really coalesces into the same book becomes, in a certain sense, both novel and travelogue and so on and so forth, right? I want to read a very short passage, and I have a question based on that, right? So for context, at a wedding, there are these sort of two characters that are sort of making plans or whatever, right? And she says, "Come with me to Agra," asked Jia hopefully, for the 100th time that day, shouting above the background beats of the wedding band. And for the 100th time that day, I tell her that I've already seen that city. I've seen the Taj, I've seen Fatehpur Sikri, I've seen Agra Fort, I've seen Akbar's tomb, and even Mariam's tomb. Bloody hell. Truth is, I barely have enough money to last me through Goa, right? So my question is twofold. One, and it's serious, and it kind of goes back to a little bit to what you were talking earlier. How does one avoid the cliche when almost everything is done, right? Like now these spaces are familiar, and everyone, I mean, lots of writers have also now traveled to these spaces and talked about them. There's that lovely piece about Spiti, for instance, that you have, right? But now a lot of people, like, it's the place to go to if you had there, right? So how does one tell that story and avoid the cliche? How does one tell the story anew?
I think it all depends on how you travel, really, because that's the only way you can tell an original story. And I think by nature, I love to sort of research and just go underground and disappear somewhere. And that's how you, and for me, it also merges with my interest in culture. So I'm always seeking out different, something that's really out of the way, not part of the usual, the traveler's circuit. Little difficult to do now because I remember during COVID being very irritated because I chanced upon a virtual tour of Frida Kahlo's house, which I'd always wanted to go to, and I didn't want to see these things. So I think with social media, it's becoming increasingly difficult because earlier you'd conjure these images in your mind and then you'd go and sort of, it was either reaffirmation or discovery. But I think just, like I said, losing yourself, it's, Paul Theroux said, travel is flight and pursuit in equal parts. So you have to do both. And I think not being conscious of an audience because just enjoying the process, and I think you just somehow find your way around it and get a story in the end.
Indrajeet, you also had a quote that I wanted to read, which I'm not going to waste time on because clearly time. But do you want to add to that? How does one avoid the cliche when one is traveling? How does one try? I was really interested in the Darjeeling story, that where you talked about the hostel and then getting kicked out, etc., etc. That's a really interesting thing to kind of do. And then you go on to say that, everybody's seen this, and Mall Road is what it is, and so on and so forth. But how does one then find something new to say about Mall Road if you're standing there?
Yeah. So the thing is, it's a very I think if you'd agree, it's a very instinctive thing. So it grows on you. So even if I don't know how to tell about it actually, like you do all the touristy stuff at the end of the day, but then you grow an instinct as you travel, as you spend more time on the road, as you're on your own. And then it kind of starts to refine on what it is going to be. But to add upon what Janhavi said about how the social media, everything, you have a template now. You do have a template of everything. I don't think traveling should be a part of that template. And also, at this point, all of us, literally all of us have seen Hawa Mahal of Jaipur. You must have a memory of Hawa Mahal on some Instagram post. If you just put hashtag Hawa Mahal, you'll see the exact same photo some 1,000 times. So with writing this book, the illustration part played that role where, it's a travelogue. It doesn't need to have pictures, but wait, let it have illustrations because that can be the more truer form of how at least I see the places. Because I know more Goa from the illustrations of Mario Miranda. That speaks more about Goa than any other thing. Or, when you get to know about the 70s, 60s America, when you go through the Mad magazine, Sergio Aragon's illustrations. So that was the whole point of adding illustrations instead of any pictures. Also, that is the only thing I could do better than writing. That's why. Something has to be at least doable.
I will be honest, when I picked up the book for the first time, the illustrations was what kind of hooked me.
I pick up every book if it has illustrations. I made it for myself. If it has illustrations, I'll keep it. It's for that. At least
you have an interest in illustrations, but the illustrations really help with this, right? I am not going to hog the mic, so I definitely want to give a chance to audience, and there are questions. Otherwise, I have several more that I want to get to. But if you have audience questions for them, I don't want to take the opportunity away from someone.
Yeah. Also, meanwhile, this 30 seconds are usually awkward, but I will just like to plug in that we will be here around if you want to chat with us. And again, sorry for making you compete between us and some delicious lunch. So we'll be around. So we can obviously have a chat after this.
Do I have a question in the audience, or should I go on with the... Oh, there is one. Is that Girisha? Yeah, okay. Can we have a mic run to Girisha right now? Because this is also showing up on YouTube, so I want to make... Who's running? All right, Girisha, shout. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Your books find a balance between empathy and distance. How do you approach representing the other, like the people you meet, without turning them into characters?
That is such a SSLA student has drafted this question. I hope you got the gist of it. Is it addressed to anyone in particular, or you want both of them to take a stab at it? Yeah, they want to hear from both of you.
I think well, in my case, I always see people as characters. I see life in stories. So, I mean, I see myself as a character as well. And that sort of just comes into fore. And, sorry, the earlier part of your question was very interesting. Could you just repeat that?
Could you repeat the early part of the question? So either overly romanticized or tending to be just purely observational. How do you avoid that?
I think it's always I think that's always existed, you know. It's not just contemporary travel writing. Earlier, you had the colonial gaze. So you had some fabulous travel writers, women, in fact, who gave their unique perspective, even though from a colonial perspective, because they could enter the zenanas. So you had, you know, Maria Graham. You had, there's an excellent book called All the Roads Are Open by Anne-Marie Schwarzenbach and her partner. They were a couple, Ella Mayat. In 1939, they left from Geneva, you know, all the way through Afghanistan, the Balkans, Turkey, Iran, Afghanistan. So there will always be, you know, a bit of romanticization. And you just have to learn to be objective. You have to keep in perspective the time that you live in. I think that is important because you always see things in hindsight. And also another book that comes to mind is Chasing the Monk's Shadow by Mishi Saran. Which again, where she, you know, retraced the monk Xuan Sang's journey. So that was a different perspective to the original text. So I guess there will always be interpretations and reinterpretations.
No,
Just sorry
agreed with it.
because you talked about retracing something, right? I just want to draw attention to something that happens in Solo, where he's gone to Hampi, right? And then he sits there and he sits and wonders that, okay, if you had come here in the 13th century, the traveler in this spot in the 13th century, what would they have thought and what would they have seen? And then the traveler in this spot when they had come like 15th century, how would they have experienced and so on and so forth, right? And then he goes on to write, I just want to do this small quote, where he says, strangely, when I think of the Vijayanagara Empire, I picture an oriole. In school, when we learned about the empire, I was distracted by an oriole perched in a tree outside the window. Our school, set in a rice field far from the city, was a place of simple joys. No uniforms, small size classes, and hands-on learning featuring activities such as farming, cooking, and painting walls. And then skipping a bit, and then he says, yet my fondest memories are of exploring the fields, spotting spiders, finding caterpillar pods, and plucking mulberries, anything but studying or sports. This is why I associate an oriole with the Vijayanagara Empire, a white-throated kingfisher with the Boston Tea Party, and a cattle plying with the Rowlatt Act. That was a lot of history, right? And I'm also interested in going back to the sort of title of our session, which talks about detours, right? And this sort of idea about, the story that you're writing and then sort of walking away from it into another story altogether, right? So if you could just respond to the question, of course, and also talk a little bit about the detouring that happens when one writes about travel.
No, so to respond to the question, I completely agree with what Janhavi says. So I'll skip to the because yeah, even I look at people as absolute characters. There's very thin line between, like, non-fiction is also like when there is a cut, there is obviously, there is a say, there is a fiction, there's fiction in it. When the editor kind of puts things in some positions, there is contrast, there's juxtaposition, then there is obviously the aspect of storytelling. So I've never had the distinction of what fiction, what films and documentaries of fiction, non-fiction kind of look like. But about the detours, this was the first ever feedback I actually got while writing this book. So the mentor for this book is Anusha Nandakumar. She and her husband, they wrote a book called The War That Made Raw. Her first was ki, like, if you're writing something, then don't journal it or don't log it. Like, I would love to know what happens while you were there. And for that, a very good reference could be The Art of Travel by I forgot if anyone remembers the name. He has a very beautiful YouTube channel called the School of Life. He's the same writer of that book, where he says that no matter how, like, if you're watching like a beautiful painting, maybe Mona Lisa, but you're jet lagged, that experience is going to be, or you have acidity. So now you're watching an art gallery during your acidity. So that experience is going to be that way. That's exactly what she was trying to say in this. So the detours kind of make a lot of sense. Also, it works on you in a way where since traveling solo is a lot about waiting and spending time with yourself. So it's always not going to be you're going to be in the moment. If you're sitting, you would obviously be thinking about what I could have done in my 6th standard to not get bullied. You do that. You have those kind of things. So those detours do happen in that travel, and they are a part of your travel. So yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that as well, because there are some that are completely unplanned. You don't necessarily have the luxury of time to take, detours. So if you're on a tight deadline, for example, so I remember, again, another story that comes to mind was when I was with a photographer we were working on this guidebook, travel guide, and we had very little time in the Kotigao Sanctuary in Goa. And we
I'm
had
so glad you got to that story. We're going to hear this one, guys. This is fun.
So we had just 2 hours. There was no way we were going to sight animals, but we said, let's just catch something. And our driver just kept honking throughout. And we kept telling him, please don't honk because we need pictures. And we're not going to see any animals. And he'd say, okay. And then he'd honk again. And then we found out that he was terrified. And he didn't want any wild animals around us because it was his first time inside a national park. And that was also the time a Bollywood film called Kaal, I think, had just come out, where these people were trapped, they were stuck inside a national park at night. So, I mean, we found it hilarious, but he turned around and he said, "Aapne Kaal picture dekhi hai, dekhi hai." so, sometimes the detour, so we didn't get any pictures that day, but then these are also the detours that add to the story. They may not, they'll come up somewhere. They didn't, I couldn't put this in the guidebook, but I could write an article about it. So I think there will always be stories in travel. But what is also important today is, travel is not just as we see it, the romantic, whatever, that part is in the past. Today, you can't talk about carbon footprint and, treat travel like it is almost an acquisition. So I think, although the words mindful and sustainable are sort of loosely bandied about, but I think that is something that needs to be integrated in travel writing today.
Being mindful of the places you travel to, right?
Of how you travel as well.
Right, of course. All right. I think I have 5 more minutes. Very quickly, I at least need to see a hand if there's a question in the audience. Otherwise, oh, there is one. Okay. Mike, please, quickly to her. All right. Mike is coming your way.
I wanted to ask this question to both of you. Like, while traveling, most of the times happens like there are some feelings or some experiences which you are not able to put into words, or you want to write them, you want to elaborate them through your words, or different kind of experiences which you just feel, and you want others to understand that through your writing or through the journey. So how do you put that, like without drawings, without illustrations, how do you put that feeling or that feel to other person, the reader, to understand?
How you read my mind? This is one of the questions I had planned, and then I skipped because of time. So I'm so glad it's come up anyway. So yeah, how do you go from experience to words?
I wrote it ugly, actually. Like, write it ugly. Like, it's like, just start putting words. Then think about how it will make sense. And then you have to, like, it's like editing, actually. So just align things in a way. But it's also about, like, reflecting on that. Like, when you write, like, the speed of your thinking is slightly slower. Then you come back to it after, like, some certain weeks. Then you're like, yeah. Then you start finding nuances in what you've written. And then you start clarifying things for yourself internally also. It might not be on the paper, but you do get something out of it. So that does happen. So I think revisiting those parts of what exactly you wanted to say.
Are you saying the famous misattribution to Hemingway, which is like write drunk, edit sober? Is that your advice? Just write it all out and then figure it out later?
Yeah, probably write it all out. Like,
yeah, okay.
It has been such a helpful advice to just put everything on the paper first, to just make that ugly little first draft, and then you kind of go through everything.
Right. Yeah, you want to take that?
I think mine is like the complete opposite, because mine involves just staring at the computer. So I will stare for hours. I have my notes written, but then when it finally comes, I think it starts to flow. So I guess every writer has a different process, and I've seen that with different writers. So, mine sometimes, I know the beginning and the end, but I don't know the middle. And it just happens as as I go along. So I think it's, yeah.
Right. So we're kind of fully out of time here, but I do want to end with the words, as it were, right? And I have the question I don't think we'll get a chance to kind of get to, but when you catch them outside to have like a quick one-on-one session with them, I want you to ask. So this is Janhavi writing about Goa, all right? And she says, I've always loved Goa in the monsoon, and on that day I was reminded why. Goa's interior landscape, often unfairly ignored in favor of its beaches, is spectacular. Anyone who has ventured in the monsoon to the tiny but dramatic medieval Mahadeva temple in Tamdi Surla, and she has another really fascinating story about going to Tamdi Surla separately as well. But anyway, she says we'll agree. Later, en route to the Pansimal rock carvings, where we got to a flat tire and had to wait for a spare, I rediscovered villages lined with verdant fields, forests, and areca plantations. Right? So the question you want to ask Janhavi is, why is Goa a main character in her work?
I'm not sure why, but it's just one of my favorite places, really. And I think I said it in my novel. You know, there's some places where you just know that you belong. Travel is like a relationship, I think, So finding a place where you just know. So I think for me, which is why it's always, Bombay and Goa, Mumbai and Goa, and all my work, fiction as well as travel.
I probably don't have time to squeeze that question in, but I do want to give a little bit of flavor of sort of Indrajeet's humor as well, right? So even before he's got on his first little assignment, right, he's taken a detour already. He's stopped by the Serendipity Arts Festival, right? And he said, I managed to squeeze out a day to attend the ongoing Serendipity Arts Festival in Panaji. I had spent an eventful day amongst grey-haired, Farbindia-adorned women at art galleries, tasting tribal food and praising anything that was entitled, contemporary, immersive, or nuanced. Art festivals are the best places to meet creative people and learn different styles of expression, though most of the time it is just figuring out the nuances of the nuanced. At the end of the hectic day, I was awaiting the train to Gokarna to begin my first backpacking shoot. So at another festival, I thought this would be an appropriate quote with which to end this session. I'm not going to try wrapping up because that will take you away from your lunch, but I just want to thank both of you so much for coming and having this conversation.
Thank you for having us here.
Travels, like books, are supposed to open your mind, and witnessing another place and people helps you put your own experiences in perspective. Thank you, Indrajeet and Janhavi, for these riveting stories of the road. I'm sure you've inspired a lot of us to get up and pack our bags and leave. But before we do that, and we close this session, I request Ananya to please felicitate our guests.